Hey everybody, happy Thursday and welcome to another TechstrongTV broadcast. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon. Today is Thursday, March 31st, the last day of the month, and tomorrow marks April 1st, so keep your guard up, folks. All right, we've got a great broadcast and a great lineup of interviews today. We're going to get things kicked off with a conversation between Alan and Hugh I believe it's Nemanzi, who is the president of a company called Anomaly. And Hugh and Alan talk about the Anomaly Cybersecurity Insights Report 2022, which outlines a number of things in the cybersecurity sector, including offering up some visibility into the current threat landscape and offers up some of the top challenges to establishing a resilient cybersecurity posture. It also offers up some details on how enterprises are adjusting their cybersecurity strategies in response to the obstacles that they've been dealing with. So, interesting report there, an interesting conversation. After that, Alan speaks with Tim Hinrichs, who is the CTO and co-founder at Styra. Styra recently announced its new declarative authorization service for cloud-native environments. This one enables IAM, or Identity and Access Management teams, to move to cloud-native technologies while still using a lot of the existing systems of records that they used, as well as scale to the level that the organization requires. So this is a great technology that enables organizations to go far beyond what they're able to do today with their cloud-native environments and their security. Good stuff there. After that, we have the Haunted Hacker podcast. In this one, Mike Jones has two guests. The first one is Jonathan Scott, who is a security researcher and privacy advocate. He's also been on the Haunted Hacker quite a few times. And he's also got Hector Santiago, who is with the Cyber Defense Services, and they talk about a number of different topics, as they normally do on the podcast, but they really do focus on the topics of innovation and ways in which organizations are pushing innovation, and actually the two guests are pushing innovation in the cybersecurity sector. They also talk about breaking the mold when it comes to a cybersecurity profile, or what makes the hacker, if you will. Also diversity and the fact that social media, and Twitter specifically, they call out Twitter, calling it the acid pot that it has become. And social media is, we all know it's kind of a dangerous tool. If in the wrong hands, it can be very, very, very bad for you. So this is a great, great podcast. And this is part one of a two-part conversation that they have. We'll be running part two on Monday's episode. But this is the first one, and it's a good one. Check it out. All right, after that, we've got the Something Old segment. This one is from the recent Predict 2022 event. This one features Matthew Gorini, who is with Forrester, and his presentation is titled, in 2022, Future Fit Tech Executives Will Deliver Long-Term Innovation. So this has to do with the shift back to tech executives solving longer-term challenges rather than kind of addressing the short-term immediate issues that cropped up during the pandemic. So taking that long view, if you will, to some of the technology issues, and then focusing on those in helping their organization thrive and just really kill it, especially from a customer perspective, is that basically the topic of his presentation. He calls this future fit, and Forrester calls this future fit. And according to data they've got that they have, the future fit companies outperform their peers by almost 3 times, 2.8 times. So it's really a fascinating discussion and presentation that Matthew has. So definitely want to check that one out also, especially if your organization is pivoting now into taking that longer view and looking at the future for the company and not just addressing those short-term challenges. All right, moving on. After that, we have, I'm back with the headlines, and then I have a conversation with Mackenzie Jackson, who is a developer advocate over at GitGuardian. And we discuss the results of the GitGuardian 2022 State of Secret Sprawl Report. Say that 3 times fast. This one shows a doubling of the number of secrets that have been leaked from GitHub compared to 2020. That is kind of frightening. And Mackenzie and I talk about why this might be happening and what organizations can do to help prevent it in the future. So it's a great, great conversation. Mackenzie's a great person to talk to. After that, I've got the webinars preview, and then we close things out today with The View with Vizard. In this one, Mike Vizard is speaking with Conquest Cyber President and Chairman Jeffrey Engel, and they talk about what will be required for companies to defend themselves against attacks from nation states in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine. It has been headlines all over the place, and we are all preparing for the cyber attack because we know it's going to come. We just don't know when it's going to come. So what Jeffrey Engel tells us is that we do need to be prepared regardless, and he offers up ways in which we can do that. So good conversation there, very relevant. All right, that is the lineup. It's a good one, folks, and I hope you'll stick around for the entirety. We're going to get things kicked off right after these commercial messages. All right, welcome back, everybody. First up on TechstrongTV today, we've got a conversation between Alan and Hugh I think it's Namanzi, who is the president of Anomaly. And they talk about the Anomaly Cybersecurity Insights Report, which offers a lot of visibility into the current threat landscape and some of the challenges to establishing a resilient cybersecurity posture for organizations. It also offers up some details on how enterprises are adjusting their cybersecurity strategies to address the issues that they've been dealing with. So it's a great report and it's a great conversation. Let's roll it now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, welcome to another segment of TechstrongTV. I'm really happy to have as a guest this segment an old friend of mine, Hugh and Jamanzi. Hugh is the president of Anomaly. I think most of you may be familiar with Anomaly, but we're going to ask Hugh to give us a brief anyway, in case you're not to worry. Hugh, welcome to TechstrongTV.
Thanks, Alan.
It's good to see your face here, and I hope all has been well with you. Likewise.
Things have been going as well as they can go in these current times.
As we were talking off camera, yes, it is. Yeah. It is that old Irish proverb. They say, may you live in interesting times.
Exactly. And specifically for cybersecurity, these are extremely interesting times. There's a lot going on, both, with the context of the pandemic and also the current world geopolitical situation. So It's not about to get boring.
No. You know what I'm afraid of with that, Hugh? And you took me down the rabbit hole already. I'm afraid that we don't get the boy who cried wolf syndrome here, right? That, look, the president is banging the drums about potential cyber attacks. And everywhere, I'm flooded with PR pitches. For people who want to comment on it. And I'm afraid that if we don't see some big bad thing happen, we're going to get a little bit of the boy who cried wolf syndrome, and people won't take it seriously the next time. Because the anomaly, no pun intended, with security is when nothing happens, we did our job.
Right. I do think in this case, it's timely that the president is sounding a cautionary note. Because I think when you're in sort of an actively evolving situation, it's a good time to take a look at things that you can improve immediately as opposed to long-term plans. And usually that means kind of taking a look at your team. Are we following the protocols that we say we follow? Is there stuff that we're putting off that we could easily start doing now? So a lot of times it's going to be sort of vetting your processes and making sure they're up to your expectations, as opposed to laying out some grandiose new 5-year plan that's not going to take effect before the threat has either come or passed.
Yeah, agreed. Look, let's just hope for the best on that. Yeah. Keith, I want to get us back a little bit on track here, though. As I said, I think folks in our audience have heard of Anomaly. They may or may not know 100%. Why don't you give us a little background?
Sure, absolutely. So Anomaly is about an 8-year-old company. We founded the company in 2013. And we have been very focused on threat intelligence, both making that more accessible, more usable within large enterprises, but also applying the intelligence to enhance organizations' cybersecurity effectiveness and results. And to that point, we are well known for our first product known as ThreatStream. We've also introduced a product named Anomaly Match into the marketplace that directly applies intelligence at scale in ways that are very complementary to existing SOCs and SOC tools. And we just literally launched this month our new XDR product, which is a SaaS product that helps deliver on the promise of XDR. You may be familiar with the acronym. It's sort of the latest buzzword in cybersecurity. And one of the goals of XDR is to make it possible to take telemetry from multiple silos. And by silos, I mean vertical security domains such as EDR or SIEMs, which are information event management tools, or email security, and combine information from all of those tools that are already deployed to gain new insights and early warnings and detection of threats. And so we're very excited about our new XDR offering. And, we think this is the right place and time for tools like this to arrive. And in fact, we just completed a survey in January conducted as a Harris poll. And we had over 800 cybersecurity decision makers from 11 different countries and organizations, all of 5,000 employees or more. And the findings were actually quite interesting, both in the area of sort of the threat landscape itself, because our survey went back all the way to 2019, so we could kind of see the delta pre-pandemic and then what happened due to the pandemic and moving forward. Mm-hmm. And the answers were also very interesting in terms of the evolving perception, importance, funding, et cetera, and approach for the cybersecurity organizations within IT. So I'd be very happy to share some of those.
Yeah, please. Let's jump into it.
Excellent. So in terms of threat landscape, what was reported was that the volume of attacks and successful breaches literally doubled from 2019 to 2020. The success rate went up to 14% of the attacks were successful in some fashion or another.
14%, you said?
Yeah, 14%. So 1/7 of all the attacks resulted in breaches.
1/7.
Yeah. The number of successful, the number of organizations that experienced these breaches went up from 14% to 28% year over year.
Doubled.
And overall, over 3 years, 87% of the organizations had experienced a successful breach. So a lot of activity going on. And the costs in 2020 were also quite high. 7% of the organizations ended up seeing an expense, whether from ransomware or other breach expenses, over $1 million. Again, maybe 40+%, 500K, between 100,000 and 500K, and about 14% above 500K. So a lot of expensive breaches, a lot of activity.
Yeah.
And part of it, I think, is because there was a lot of change that resulted from the pandemic. So basically, companies went more digital. So a lot of digital transformation. People were working from home. People were working solo. And so I think the attack surface exposed to malicious attackers got bigger more rapidly than the defenses could keep up.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Okay.
Let me jump in if you don't mind.
Yeah.
There's a couple things I think are at play there. Number one is the old axiom. I think it was Abba Eban, a UN ambassador from Israel, once said, the Palestinians never miss an opportunity, they miss an opportunity, or something like that. The bad guys never miss an opportunity to take advantage of an opportunity.
True.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so a lot of these, I say bad guys, bad gals, bad people, malicious actors in any form and shape they come in.
Exactly.
Saw this as Candyland, right? This was the opportunity of a lifetime for them. Number one.
Exactly.
Number two, at the same time, in our rush to keep the wheels on the trains and, support our remote workers and everything, this whole digital transformation, we sort of looked the other way. We loosened up a lot of our cyber controls.
Right.
All right, so it's not a company-owned laptop. All right, so it's your daughter's laptop that she goes into chat rooms on, and watches TikTok with.
Yeah,
that's okay.
True.
I need you to do your work, right?
Right.
And so you had that. At the same time, you had these guys, jumping on an opportunity.
Yeah.
It had to go. It had to end this way.
That's right.
It was almost inevitable.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a perfect storm, just like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And, on top of that, I think there is not as much of a peer infrastructure because everybody is on Zoom for meetings, but generally they don't get the chance to have sidebar conversations with their peers.
No.
So it's a very disruptive environment that the attackers were taking advantage of. And they also immediately jumped on the opportunity to create sort of specifically targeted phishing campaigns that were leveraging people's fear of the pandemic.
Agreed.
Agree. Again, for people not in the cyber industry, and we have a very tech audience, but there's a lot of developers and stuff like that, DevOps, cloud native folk. But people not in the cyber industry, I think sometimes they're amazed at the organization and infrastructure of the bad actors. Right. These people are highly organized. They have processes and tools in place that rival the kind of tools our cybersecurity teams have. Right.
Absolutely.
Whether we're there's a whole economic hierarchy of these folks.
Yeah.
Right. And so this isn't kiddie scripters we're dealing with, right? They range everything from nation states to highly profitable, economic driven, bad actors to to hacktivists and social and all of these things. But this is not the unwashed masses. These are very organized, very smart.
Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, one of the questions on the survey was, are these IT organizations, are they more concerned about organized groups or individual hackers? And the overwhelming majority said organized groups are the threat that they face.
Absolutely, it's organized. Because, not to be all doom and gloom, let me go the other way a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is, Hugh, is I think overall, for the most part, our security posture at most organizations today are better than they were, let's say, 5 years ago.
Agreed.
Right? We've made progress in the last 5-10 years, no doubt about it.
True.
We just, part of security is this whole cat and mouse game and reactive kind of thing. And so it's actually interesting. The person I was interviewing before you, a recent survey of SOC analysts, 70% said they found their job rewarding. They're doing good.
Yeah.
64% said they were changing jobs in the next 12 months.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So, that's the reality of our world. That's
right.
That's the security person, right?
Yeah.
Keith, Hugh, I always like to ask people, so when you look at the survey, what results kind of caught you by surprise that you wouldn't have thought they would show this?
Well, that's actually easy in a way, because there were some very unintuitive responses. For example, one of the things that we asked about was, what are folks looking for these days when they are acquiring, purchasing, researching cybersecurity solutions? And I don't think anybody, certainly I was surprised, I don't think anybody would expect that the last two things on the list were cost and ROI. So
really?
In other words, the priorities have shifted. So It's not that people don't care about those things, it's that everything else now is more important. So in fact, the three most important things on the list were the vendor support for the product, ease of use, and integration with other third-party products in our environment.
Really?
So that seems
that's heartening.
Yeah. And I think that this is also tied to the pandemic, because I was mentioning earlier this dynamic that people are no longer sort of 20 people in a room. You just lean over to the next guy's desk to ask for help. So it kind of makes sense that if everybody's working individually, kind of as a lone ranger, working as part of a broader team that is not really real time talking to each other, that you either need a product that's dead easy to use, or you need to be able to reach the vendor if you don't have a neighbor in the next seat to get help, insights, consultation, advice. And then also, again, if the sort of SOC and IT environment are being administered remotely, then having seamless integration with the other tools rather than somebody kind of stoking the coals on the fire all day, every day, seems like another natural outcome in terms of requirements. So it kind of makes sense to me, but it was surprising to see that shift.
Yes, yeah, that is. Look, I'm in security 25, 30 years. To hear that price and ROI is at the bottom, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, Hugh, we're almost out of time. For people who want to take a look at the full report and the findings, where can they go?
They can go to anomaly.com. And it's an interesting report. It's over 20 pages long, and I think everyone will find something interesting that can be applied to your situation.
Absolutely. And for those out there who aren't sure, Anomaly is ANOMALI.com. Right?
Absolutely.
All right. Hey, Hugh, it's great seeing you, man. I'm glad everything is well with you. I look forward to seeing you, maybe RSA in June or something.
Absolutely.
We'll see you in person.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.
Fingers crossed.
Always a pleasure.
Take care, Alan.
All righty.
Bye-bye, Hugh.
Bye.
All right. We're going to take a break here on TechstrongTV. We'll be right back.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, we are back. Next up, we've got a conversation between Alan and Tim Henricks, who is the CTO and the co-founder of Styra. And they talk about Styra's new declarative authorization service for cloud-native entitlements. So in this, with the solution, the identity and access management teams can move to cloud-native technologies while still using a lot of their systems of record, as well as scale to the level that their organization requires. This is a great technology. It's almost like a bridge technology, and Tim and Alan discuss it at length. So let's go ahead and roll the conversation.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on another TechstrongTV segment. I'm happy to have back on TechstrongTV today our friend Tim Henricks from Styra. Hey, Tim, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, Alan. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to have you here. Tim, we always enjoy actually meeting or having the Styra folks on, whether it's Bill or you or anyone else. Of course, Styra is a company that in the cloud native space has really kind of made a name for themselves. But, though our audience is a cloud native audience, technical, they may or may not know Styra, or they probably maybe have heard of Styra, they've probably heard of OPA. But why don't we kind of make sure everyone's level set, Tim, and give them a little background?
For sure. Yeah, great. So, what Styra does is we help enterprises by providing them a unified solution to authorization. And so for folks that don't know and don't work on authorization every day like I do, just remember that authorization is this problem of controlling what actions that people and maybe software can take within like a piece of software. So let me give you an example or two here. Every time I log on to my bank online, I can see all my bank accounts, but I may not be able to see my wife's bank accounts. I may not be able to move money between her bank account and mine. And so that's an authorization problem. It's, controlling what actions I can take. Can I withdraw money? Can I deposit money? So on and so forth. And so that's one kind of authorization that we work on at Styra. But another good example is sort of at the developer level. So those websites that we all use every day, those are built by developers, and developers are also taking actions. And so, one kind of action that they might want to take is they're upgrading the software, or they're deploying a database, or they're changing some network configurations. Again, all of those are actions, and there needs to be authorization controls in place to make sure that the right actions are being taken by the right people at the right time. And at Styra, we provide software that helps an organization sort of manage all of those permissions, all of those authorization policies across all of those different kinds of pieces of software.
Excellent. Love it. And we might as well get it out of the way while we're here, Tim. People who want to get more information on Styra, it's Styra, Styra, and it's Styra.com, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. Definitely check that one out.
All right.
We've gotten that. Oh, you know what else, Tim? We didn't even tell them about what your position at Styra is. We should give them that too.
For sure, yeah. So my name's Tim Henricks. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Styra. I spend part of my time working on our commercial product offerings, but then I spend the other part of my time on our open source efforts. And, one of the things that we do in open source is we started the Open Policy Agent project, or OPA, as we like to call it, and then we donated to the CNCF. So I've got a foot in both of those areas of work.
Love it. Hey, Tim, are you going to be out at KubeCon in Spain in May, or planning it? Not sure yet?
Not sure yet, but yeah, it'd be great. I'd love to get back out and start, going back on that conference circuit and, seeing people, chatting with them about, policy and authorization, and just seeing folks again. I think it'd be great.
We are currently planning on being there. We're going to be doing, we're going to hopefully try to do some videos, but a different sort of setup. I forgot what they're calling it. Something Tapas Talks or something. So short, little smaller segments. Again, assuming the world is right, we will be there. Anyway, but Tim, let's focus in on what we want to talk about today, which is you guys recently announced a new offering.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, for sure. So the new offering that we just released a little while ago, we call it the entitlements offering as part of our normal product called the Declarative Authorization Service. And so the idea behind this new offering is that it's really designed to help organizations take custom applications and migrate them from on-premise data centers into the cloud more effectively, more quickly. And so the problem that we kind of saw happening over and over was that if you've got one of these on-prem applications, especially an application that's focused around helping your employees, interact with each other or the organization as a whole, these employee-focused applications, a lot of those apps are dependent on what folks will call an on-premise entitlement service. So that entitlement service is often backed by LDAP or Active Directory or something, and it's sort of just those applications sort of need to know which groups the employees are a member of in order to sort of grant permissions within the application. And so the challenge when you're migrating those kinds of applications into the cloud is that, in the cloud, what you don't want to be doing is having an application running, on the other side of the world and having to make a request all the way back to your on-premise LDAP or AD. Like the round trip time, the availability, the performance and availability are just too poor. It's sort of an anti-pattern in the cloud. And so these folks that we're talking to are struggling because they want to migrate these applications to the cloud. But in order to do that, they also have to migrate those on-prem entitlement services to the cloud. And so this new offering from Styra really makes that easy. You sort of just hook it up to your LDAP or AD, and then you can deploy that thing in as many cloud regions as you like.
Excellent. Back at the end of last year, I told our team here, and I think we said it on our Predict event, that I thought like IAM was going to be the battleground, the most important thing for us to be focusing on, especially as it relates to cloud native and security and stuff like this. Of course, this was before, the software supply chain, bills of management, and the ransomware, and a lot of the stuff that we've seen come down. But I still believe that IAM is the kind of the soft white underbelly. It's where cloud security gets done in a lot of ways, right? You have cloud providers who are investing billions, literally billions of dollars into their infrastructure and their security. And we count on them to deliver the security to a certain level of that stack. The rest of that stack, for a good chunk of it, is protected by our IAM, right? And if we don't have that, I'm not blaming anyone, but just this week we've seen Okta, right, with a problem, and it can and I'm not blaming Okta. Any one of us can be the next Okta or the next SolarWinds or the next, take your pick. We're all vulnerable at some point, but it just goes, it goes to show you how vulnerable we really are through the IAM stuff. Tim, what made you guys kind of go down this path? Obviously with what you do, it was kind of adjacent and it wasn't out of left field. But what made you say, hey, we need to do this? Yeah,
well, there are a couple of things. You mentioned a whole bunch of things. One of which I'm sorry. Before I get to your question, but I think that this, the recent stuff around Okta was interesting because I think one of the things that sort of should remind all of us of is just this idea that there are two kinds of companies in the world: those that have been compromised and those that don't know they've been compromised. Right? To your
exactly.
Point. And so this thing with Okta just, I think, highlights this idea that once you sort of understand and sort of internalize this idea that you're going to be compromised, the only sort of thing you can do is put defense in depth in place. And so authentication, right, proving that you are who you say you are, which single sign-on vendors have done a tremendously good job of, is that first level of defense. But then the authorization is that second level, where what you want to do is sort of control the amount of damage that is done once one of those user accounts is compromised. Right, and that's the notion of authorization. You limit the amount of permissions that every one of those accounts have, and so that's to your point, one of the foundational principles of security, that you layer levels of security in place so that when any one of them gets compromised, you have several others to put in place.
Absolutely. We hear the term zero trust getting thrown around, right? And it's funny, with zero trust, to a lot of people's idea, once I get that, I do my single sign on. So now I know Tim is Tim. And now, Tim, here's the keys to the castle, right? Have at it, right? But I think what people miss is with zero trust is just because Tim is Tim doesn't get the keys to the castle. Tim should get just what Tim needs,
right.
Not what, Tim may want, or Tim, he doesn't get everything. So that if Tim is compromised, I've still limited my exposure. And, again, to me, that's really, when we start getting into the permutations of zero trust and how we do IAM, it's so important that we have that, right? Not everybody's access is created equal.
Right. I totally agree. And, I think, one of the more interesting things that we've seen is that part of why I think a lot of folks end up with maybe more permissions than they need is just that these authorization systems today traditionally have been hard to use, right? Like every product, every project, every service on the planet has a unique way of solving authorization. So if somebody needs, additional permissions for some small period of time, and I'm the admin, well, I got to go poke around and figure out how to give them just some permissions. And then there's this back and forth, like, okay, I gave you more permissions. Did that work? No. Okay, I'll give you more permissions. Did that work? No. And at some point you just say, forget it.
You know what? I'll give you everything.
You're an admin, yeah. And then what happens is, you're supposed to, pull those permissions back a week later, but then you forget because you get busy. And so I think there's this very real notion of permissions creep, where people just have more and more permissions over time, because everybody's definitely going to ask for more permissions when they need them to do their job. Very few people are going to say, oh, you know what? I've got too many. I don't need those anymore. And so I think one of the things that we do at Styra, by trying to provide a unified solution, a foundational solution for authorization, is help with this, because we say, look, there's one collection of tools and technologies you need to learn in order to deal with permissions. And now if you can apply those to all your 57 different products and services, well, you just are more conversant with being able to give rights correctly and being able to revoke them. And so, I think that speaks well to, why in part we're doing what we're doing at Styra.
Absolutely. So let's, if you don't mind, Tim, let's talk a little bit about kind of the business aspect of this new offering. How's it packaged? How's it offered? How is it priced? Yeah. Is there a free open source version?
Yeah, and maybe I'll also offer offer an answer to the question about why did we end up doing this, because I didn't get to.
Yeah, please.
So it's one of these nice things that, because we have an active user base in the open source world, and because we have active customers on the commercial world, we get to just watch what they do all the time. And then, when we see a pattern emerge where we see the same people having to address the same kinds of authorization problems, then we realize, well, that's a systemic problem throughout our community and organizations. And so then we can go ahead and, put the energy into building a new offering. And that was exactly what happened with this entitlements solution. We just saw a number of our open source and commercial customers and users saying, having to solve this problem and using OPA and DAS to do that. And so then we just realized, well, hey, if they're kind of, piecemealing things together, why don't we just put forth a real offering around this, designed specifically to solve this entitlements problem. So that's how it came about. To answer your second question, how's it packaged and priced and all that good stuff? Well, so typically what we do is, this is another feature, so to speak, or a solution, or sometimes we call it a use case for our product, our declarative authorization service. So that declarative authorization service was designed to provide a unified solution to authorization. It helps you with Kubernetes authorization, with microservice authorization, service mesh. It helps you with public cloud through Terraform, and now entitlements. And so in that sense, it's yet another feature, so to speak, in the product that exists. And so in that sense, you get, if you're just using DAS, then you can kind of just pick that out of the list and put it in place. DAS is available as a SaaS offering, so everybody can run it, and you can sign up for free as well. So I definitely suggest, if you want to try it out, go log in and do that. We do, for the enterprise version, also offer an on-prem solution. And so if folks want to actually run DAS on-prem or in their, it doesn't have to be on-prem, it could be in their private cloud accounts, then they can do that as well.
Excellent. So once again, proving the old axiom: it's not a product, it's a feature, right? And it's good when you can have a product, whether people tend to say, "Oh, it's a platform, not a product," but you have a product that has multiple features like that handle this kind of thing. Tim, it's available now. I assume it's been beta tested, hardened, gotten the feedback, and it's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it's one of our earlier releases for sure. So but yeah, we definitely want people out there trying it and giving us feedback for sure.
How do people go sign up and give it a whirl?
Yeah, go to Styra.com. There's a sign up link. And then, when it drops you into the product, you'll get to pick from one of several quick starts that help you sort of walk through putting stuff in place, and you can kind of kick the tires.
I love it. Tim, thanks for coming on and telling us about this exciting new feature in the Styra product line. Looking forward to hearing more. I do hope we get to see you at KubeCon in May in Valencia, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
That would be absolutely fantastic. And thanks. It's been a pleasure chatting with you again, Alan.
All right. Say hello to all our friends at Styra. Tim Hendricks, CTO, co-founder at Styra, here on TechstrongTV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
All right, we are back. Next up, we've got the Haunted Hacker podcast. In this episode, which is part one of a two-part conversation, host Mike Jones speaks with Jonathan Scott, who is a security researcher and privacy advocate, and no stranger to the Haunted Hacker podcast. And also Hector Santiago, who is with the Cyber Defense Services. They talk about so many different things in cybersecurity, including breaking the mold of the cybersecurity technologist and the hacker, the importance of diversity in cybersecurity, and the acid pot that social media has become. Great conversation, as always. I encourage you to check it out. So let's go ahead and roll it now.
Welcome to the Haunted Hacker podcast version Jonathan Scott V1.2, I guess. This is the second time or third time, Jonathan?
Yeah, but I think the third time.
Third time. So we'll just call it Jonathan V3. All right. And tonight we have a co-host, special co-host. A lot of you remember when I interviewed Zach M. not too long ago from Cyber Defense Services. Tonight we have Hector Santiago, who is going to be my guest co-host and probably a fixture on the show at some point, hopefully. Welcome tonight, Hector, and thanks for joining me. So as far as news goes, not a whole lot. I just got back from Pennsylvania, Hershey, Pennsylvania, speaking at PDE, which is the Pennsylvania Department of Education conference, and talking about risks and vulnerabilities that kids face on the internet and the little hackers that we're breeding and the types of damage they can do to the networks of school. And you'd be surprised how many people were shocked to hear what they're capable of. It was really quite scary. And then today I just literally just finished up filming for a docuseries out of Europe. And we filmed from early this morning until just like an hour or so ago. So it's been a pretty busy weekend. But it's exciting and it's good news. And the more people that we can reach with, security and make people aware of what's out there and the follies that they're facing and the dangers, I think that's really important, especially for kids. So without further ado, let's get started. Jonathan, it's been great to have you on the show previously, and we've talked about multiple topics when it comes to mobile security and kind of what you were doing then, and just dealing with trolls and all of the fanfare that comes with it. So why don't you give us an update and tell us, where you're at, what you're doing now. It's been 3 or 4 months since we talked, and I know a lot's happened since then. So why don't you give us an update really quick?
Sure. So still hacking mobile and IoT. And recently I've been getting into crypto hardware wallet hacking. Nice. And so it's not only just the hardware aspect, but finding malicious applications that are out to steal cryptocurrency, seed phrases, just combing through your entire phone for anything related, right? Really interesting time right now. And Ellipal wallet was the first crypto wallet, the hardware wallet that I hacked, and they publicly acknowledged the hack and a really cool company. And since then, so I hacked SecUX and then a couple of others I've hacked as well. It's just not out yet. But it's all really interesting because, these hardware wallets are supposed to be super, super secured. And even with Ellipal, right, they literally said, we are unhackable, right? And that's their claim. And well, of course, when you say that, it's just kind of like fuels the fire even more, right? And I signed an NDA to not disclose what the vulnerability was, and of course they paid me, right? And so I respect it, but it's really interesting because I think that the when you do say something like that, I mean, it kind of just pushes people harder, right? Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, we can't hack this, really? And but working with them has been great. So they put me on their security team to send me a new product and do testing when that comes out. Same with SecUX, and so from there has led me into a lot of other crypto related things. So I was endorsed by Breadcrumbs, a blockchain forensics firm. And so I'm actually studying for my blockchain forensics exam. So I love that. I love doing it, right? So, I mean, it all kind of goes together, right? So, I mean, we transact with cryptocurrency on our mobile devices. It's the number one way that we transact with cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. Hardware wallets just supposed to be safe, but it's all just kind of IoT, mobile, all together. So, it's been really fun, just jumping in with that crowd too, staying away from the trolls, of course, there's always going to be some, but yeah, so I've really started, really enjoy that kind of, space right now. It was a nice kind of a, few months to learn something new. Right. So,
that's pretty awesome. And it's really important, I think too, is to do something you really enjoy. Like Hector works for Zach and I had Zach on the show and listened to him talk about his passion for what he does and for his team. It's pretty impressive. And, Hector, I'm sure that, you're the same way. You do what you love, right?
Yes, sir. You know how it is. Whenever you got something in your mind or whenever you got something that you are curious about, mm-hmm. you might as well explore it, which is like the whole cybersecurity, offensive, defensive, and that's basically where we're at, and that's what gets you where you need to be.
Yeah, I think it's a curiosity. You and I talked a lot about this, Jonathan, and our passion for what we do. And I think what's really interesting is when you find something that you know is big, but you can't really talk about it, and how difficult it is not to talk about it. You and I discussed a vulnerability that I developed that wasn't really a vulnerability that existed, but I created it. And I've had to sit on that for a while now. It's really itching. And I really want to get it out to the public. But in doing so, I know that if I do it ahead of schedule or ahead of when it's expected, it can cause damage to both me and the products that it affects, right? So tell me about that when it comes to finding vulnerabilities in like blockchain or blockchain wallets. You know, do you sometimes sit and think about, you know, should I release this or should I not release this? You know, because I think with any researcher, that's the biggest question that we ask ourselves.
Right. So there's and it's a good point because I know that the last time that we actually our first podcast, I was talking about, you know, I always release things to the public first, and then, you know, from there they can, but when there's a point that I realize I can't do that. Right. So particularly with this case. So, if people are probably listening to this and, well, it's a hardware wallet, what's the big deal? Well, these are Android based hardware wallets. Right. So it falls literally right in line with mobile. Right. So if you're a mobile hacker, pick up one of these wallets, and then you can imagine, right, that you can imagine how, well, vulnerabilities are just crazy. But yes, I couldn't actually, I don't usually sign NDAs, right? I don't usually do that. It's kind of like was against my ethos, but in this sense, like it was such an issue that, I could not let that out. And I worked with the team for a while. Actually, it was people had no idea. Right. So when it came out, people were saying like, oh, wait, what? It's not secured. But the thing is we worked together to the extent that we made sure that the patch was in place by the time that they released the news. Right. So there was already a patch in place. And so no one could say, oh, well, my wallet was compromised. Well, you push the patch, and new products are actually released with the patch. And I tested the patch, the whole bit. But yeah, when it comes to like finances and financial, crypto companies are I view it as like a financial institution. We've got to be very, very mindful of that because, yeah, as you know, that this money's just leaving these institutions, and it is very, very important to use discretion when you're running these kinds of vulnerabilities. It's not like some sort of a bypass, like an FRP bypass or something. This is a whole nother level, right?
Yeah, and when you look at like sanctions, like the U.S. puts sanctions on North Korea and China all the time, right? And what's the first thing they go after? They go after cryptocurrency. Absolutely. You get the Chinese popping up crypto mining farms and trying to hack into wallets to steal crypto. And I think that's the route that we're going to go. I think eventually the US dollar is going to end up succumbing to the economy that we're in right now. I mean, it's tanking as we watch it. And then when you watch Russia, with what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, they've been pretty much disconnected from the world banking institutions. So what's there left to do besides go to crypto? The U.S. can't control that completely. The sanctions don't work on that side. So that it's a natural transgression. And I think it's interesting too. I think that we need to pay more attention to the blockchain and to the security of the blockchain. Because we all three of us know that the blockchain is not 100% secure, and if the FBI is able to go in and steal people's cryptocurrency from them after they do a ransomware attack, that obviously it's not secure if they can do that. But one thing I found interesting, I had someone send me not too long ago, a guy gifted me an NFT. And it was really interesting. I've never seen this before. I'm not really in depth into NFTs or anything like that. But it was basically like a ghost, right? And it developed over a period of time, and now it's become this little character. And he's recommended, a wallet to maintain this NFT in. So NFTs are really confusing for I think most people. So why don't you guys? I'm sure Hector, you know about NFTs. Jonathan, I'm sure you know about NFTs as well. Why don't you guys lay out for me exactly what NFTs are on a layman's level, to where people watching, the viewers and listeners, can understand exactly what they are and maybe the risk involved with NFTs. I'll let you guys discuss that and then hash that out.
You go, Jonathan.
Right.
I'm not that great with NFTs.
Sure.
However, I try to figure out how to just copy and paste the NFT. That's what most people with like our mindset might probably want to do. I know a lot of people that like actually have their doubts about NFTs.
Sure.
But at the same time, like myself, like I'm not like the whole like, oh, the NFT master for this kind of stuff. Like I will probably code an NFT. Fact, like it's just a linked list, point it to each other, hash it, and then the hash number. Just like I'll probably code it, no problem. But like I'm still like understanding and developing like how can like this like thing, like how this like piece of code that is hash cannot be secure or hacked, because like you can even nowadays, if you tell the computer to potentially just like if the hash change, you can make a function to tell it to go back to the last number that it was. That's just straight code programming. So I got a whole bunch of doubts too when it comes to the whole NFT.
Yeah, I think so. When we say NFT, people generally always jump towards like a piece of art, but an NFT is a contract, right? That's what it is, right? An NFT is a smart contract, and let's just take, for example, written in Solidity, and so the assets that you can create attached to an NFT are what we understand as like NFT art, NFT music. And so, for example, why would anybody want an NFT? Right? Well, it's a JPEG, right? People are like, this is a scam. This is crazy, right? But this is where the contract comes in. So let's just say that I'm sure you're all familiar with Photoshop and layers that you can create. Imagine now you're taking that ghost, right? Someone sends you a ghost, and the body shape is one layer. The background is another layer. The eyes, the mouth, maybe it has wings or any other details. And let's just say we have now like 12, to 20 different, layers. And each one of these are part of, create the asset, the full asset, right? So these are individual characteristics, right? Within that create that NFT. So the NFT art, that is. So the smart contract will say, this is the percentage of the piece of art that, let's just say 10% of this art are eyes, 5% are a mouth and, background or whatever it may be. And so all of these characteristics are held in this contract. And so if you don't receive exactly what's in that contract, well, you know that you've been shammed. And this is what makes these pieces of art unique. So, and this is where it becomes like very rare or maybe like one of a kind asset. So let's just say that people can make 10,000, this like that general number, 10,000 NFT images, and then just kind of run through a script, and then they take all those individual assets, the eyes, the mouth, and everything, and then they just randomize it for 10,000 different images. Now, that's okay, but where, let's just take like a Bored Ape, for example. And those, the Bored Apes are, the hottest, NFT art pieces out right now, and they're taking it to another level, right? So now we have this. It started with this image, right? This image has a contract bound to it and say, hey, this image is unique. So now the artists are actually have another avenue I can't see it because of your fuzz, their blur.
Yeah, I'm going to unblock the blur really quick so you can get an image of what he's talking about as far as the crypto art goes, which is really quite interesting.
Yeah.
So I was sent this. It's on OpenSea, and this is what. Let's see if we can get a decent shot of it here. It's not. There we go. You can kind of see it. It's a Ghost Friends. And so when I first got it, there was nothing there, and it developed over time, and that's what I have now. So that represents the smart contract he's talking about.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, so there's a smart contract behind behind this piece of art. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting because, all right, so let's just say that on OpenSea, there's a placeholder image. Okay, that placeholder image, it's what you're expecting to purchase, right? But there are times where what you expect to purchase is, by the time it finally the smart contract executes and the funds are actually you actually transact, you get a link, right? So these images are held either on Web2, either in an AWS server, or on a air quotes like a Web3 IPFS server. Which is basically a peer-to-peer hosted server, and so that link that you get ends up in that once the contract is executed, that's it, right? That's it's on chain, and that's what you bought, and you bought a spec of something, and then they'll do the same rug over and over. So they're selling back that super fancy piece of art, but end up sending you something like a spec. That's just even one way how these things can happen, because inside that smart contract you have 24 KB worth of data that you can actually put into a smart contract. You cannot go beyond that, or it's just not possible right now. Hopefully in the future. But with that said, that's where those links come in. So it kind of there's a lot of issues with that. So, but then again, there's also even code that can be written into these smart contracts that says, all right, I'm going to maybe I'm going to sell you an ape, but I'm going to write a piece of code that's actually going to reverse that. And so what's going to happen is once the transaction happens, there's a reversal that's going to actually happen within the contract. And I've seen it many times. And so they get their ape back. You get your bag gets taken. And so this is why it's very important to make sure that if you're going to be purchasing an art asset or a music asset or a utility, right? And utility even is like a physical thing or some sort of a earning of a timeshare or whatever it could be, that you have someone audit that contract. And if it's not been audited, right, by a professional service, let's just say Open Zeppelin, for example, then this is something that you really need to be mindful of, because you can be taken advantage of. And it happens every single day. I cannot even tell you, I've worked so many different cases. It gets pretty bad, but there's a lot of advantages to the NFTs that I can see, and even in the future. Now, even with the Bored Apes, right? So the Bored Apes have created a token now, which is the ape token. And now they're opening a restaurant in California, and it's been said that they'll be using that ape coin, so you can actually transact with the ape coin, and it's going to be really interesting. So now they're kind of moving on into different things, but again, that coin is behind a smart contract, right? So that smart contract actually allows you to transact and buy and sell. You buy and sell ApeCoin with a smart contract. There's always a smart contract behind this whole thing. So
yeah, it's pretty interesting. So when that was sent to me, I thought, okay, someone's trying to either hack me or take advantage of me, right? Because he was giving me the NFT. It wasn't like I purchased it. It was given to me. And with Ghost Friends, it kind of develops over time. So when I first got the link, there was nothing there. And as time goes by, that NFT comes to light or it grows. And then I got a link for a wallet to keep that NFT in. But when you first get into it, there is a lot of moving parts to it. And, for the layman and the people who don't understand, what it's all about, it could be mind-boggling, right? So my first reaction when I got that link was, should I click on this shit? Like, I don't know this dude. Should I click on it? It's a gift. How many times do I get a free gift? But I took a chance, and
you got what's called an airdrop. So they call it an airdrop. Yeah. Those are awesome because they're free, right? And the value of them could just skyrocket. So you actually have something pretty valuable on your hands. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool because I people give me stuff, but usually there's something attached to it, right? Just like I give people stuff, and there's normally some kind of reverse communication coming from it. But yeah, it was a total gift, and it gave me a chance to really look into it and see what it was all about. And I think like you said, the world of NFT is interesting, but there are a lot of chances to get screwed over in NFTs as well when it comes to smart contract. So I was named CISO of a company in Scotland that was a smart contract company. It was a tokenization of assets, right? So what happens is, let's say a piece of information is held within this server, and each person that has access to the information, it's tokenized, right? So if you crack that token, or if you hack that communication, there's literally no data attached to it because it's tokenized. But at the time, it was such a young company, and I complain about it all the time. I literally worked for them for free, and to find out it was literally just to get them into Financial Times magazines. They used me to get somewhere else. It was really shitty. But I learned a lot in the process about blockchain and tokenization and where we're going as a civilization, which brings to mind another great concept. And Jonathan, I haven't talked to you about this very much, but so when I had Zach on, Hector works with him, and Zach's the CEO, and he actually, I think I told you, he has a data center, a cloud that literally runs in his van and is run off of solar power, which I thought was fucking mind-blowing, right? Like, how many times you see technology like that floating down the street? Like AWS on wheels is what I thought of. So Hector, why don't you take a moment and tell us about that concept and both of these, like NFTs and blockchain, moving data centers and clouds to mobile platforms, are all very groundbreaking, very cutting edge. And like Jonathan, we talked earlier, when people have these ideas, people, usually, crack jokes at it, or try to say it won't work, or try to say this is imaginary. We talked about the flat Earth idea and Galileo's, look at view of the Earth, and how people are still thinking that the Earth is flat. But these concepts are new concepts. And a lot of people are, oh, they're crazy, but it'll never work. So Hector, tell us about what you have going on with the cyber defensive initiative and what you guys are working on, because to me, I think it's a gold mine.
So our stuff is very different than what everybody else do. Some of the stuff that I can share will be like there's such a thing like a copy and paste data center that you can just grab it from somewhere else. So instead of now you going to AWS or Microsoft or whatever, there is ways now that you can just basically copy and paste the code, and you got a data center. That's like one of the biggest things, like NATO from Cloud Underground. They are promoting this thing like real big because it's just good. Like there's not really need to have an actual servers and this kind of stuff now serving next to you. However, you can also host your own data center, and if you know how to develop that code that goes behind it, then the only thing you have to do to share is just basically code, like just copy and paste, which is one of the biggest things that now going on. It's a different kind of cloud, but at the same time, it's more like not really the whole big Amazon or big Google. It's an easier, more secure way than the bigger companies. Like, for example, the bigger companies get hacked by the 16-year-olds, then you're gonna know that, like, hey, you know, like what's going on here, but like how this thing is like happening. You don't know. You got no clue of what's going on and what's happening. And one, because it's closed source, so you don't really know where you're talking to. Versus whenever you have your own copy and paste data center, you know your code, you know what doesn't go in the data center. You know if somebody attack it, and whenever you have control over that stuff, you can react however you want to react. And I know some of you guys, you guys probably know that the cybersecurity industry is like real dirty. It's like people trying to hack you, people try to attack you. And like some of the big companies, they can they have a lot more to lose versus having if you were to have your own copy and paste data center or somebody that can manage it, it will be different because there's not really that much limitations. It's a small surface versus a big, huge surface.
Yeah. And I think it's important because, you know, having you two guys on the show is really important to me because you guys kind of represent the forward thinking, you know, let's push the envelope a little bit further. Let's find something new. Let's find something better. And I think big tech has stood in the way of innovation for so long in our industry that it's kind of stifled the voices of, you know, the grassroots initiatives like the cloud server, you know, like the mobile hacking, the type of research you do, Jonathan. And I think it's important that the world listens to the grassroots and what we're trying to put out there, that big tech is definitely going to try to stop and try to diminish and hide the fact that we can do this on our own. And I think that's the biggest risk to innovation into the future is, you know, we have a lot of bright minds out there like you guys that are really going after trying to innovate and trying to push technology to the next level. But big tech doesn't want that because they want to shut down that thinking because they control that space right now. Jonathan, you've seen that firsthand, you know, with like Apple and some of the other vendors that you put something out there and they try to quiet it, right?
Yeah. So actually even recently, I mean, it you know, I was assigned 2 CVEs recently, and I'm waiting for my other CVEs. But I mean, it took me like almost 7 months, actually, almost 7 months from when I reported to actual assignment of these CVEs. Now, I'm in a battle with Samsung right now because you know, one of the vulnerabilities that I've sent to them is a wiper. And this wiper has been around for 13 years in every single one of these Samsung devices. Now, here's the thing is like, you know, people, there's actually a British guy that really, you know, well known. Gosh, I think he started the Hacker Warehouse. I think that's what it was. Yeah. And he said, and I was going to release the code because Samsung at the time they weren't having it. They were like, no, this is not an issue. This is wipers or whatever. That's not a big deal. And he said, let me tell you, if you release this code, you're literally releasing a weapon out to the public.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
All right, we're back, everybody. Next up, we've got our Something Old segment. This is from the Predict 2022 event. This features Matthew Gorini from Forrester. He's got a talk titled, "In 2022, Future Fit Tech Executives Will Deliver Long-Term Innovation." Pivoting from addressing the short-term challenges back in 2020 and 2021, a lot of organizations are now taking the longer view and looking to solve some of their longer-term challenges. So the organizations that do that well are going to be the most successful, Matthew says. He says Forrester calls this future fit, and data shows that future fit companies outperform their peers by 2.8 times. That's really fascinating. It's a great topic and one definitely worth checking out. So let's go ahead and roll it now.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Guarini, and I work for Forrester Research. And I'm here today to talk to you about future fitness and how future fit firms don't fear the future. Now, in my role, I head up what's called our tech exec practice at Forrester. I've been a CIO in the past, and I've also done technology work for consulting, and I've done it for vendors. So I have a unique perspective where I've been in the chair and I've worked for people that have worked with people in the chair. So what I want to talk to you today is about some of the challenges we see going forward and how we think leaders are going to respond. So I'm going to take you back a few years, and I'm going to start with what we saw happening to companies. And we saw companies struggling to survive. Sure, they're leaders, but it's the people that are that big tail behind the leaders. And we saw, and you see it on this chart, that companies are struggling to win and just even struggling to survive. And then the pandemic hit, and that has poured fuel on the fire. And so if you thought it was hard to survive before the pandemic, you better figure out what you need to do moving forward. Now, with this challenge, what I want to try and do is I want to talk to you about a couple of predictions that Forrester has for the year ahead. And with those predictions, I'll use that to set the table for how we think you need to move forward. So the first prediction that Forrester has made is that cutting edge tech execs will leap from digital to human-centered transformation. Now, we've talked about digital transformation for years. And the challenge that we've always had is, what is it? We've talked about it in a lot of cases of what we've seen. It's been the deployment of technology to try and achieve certain goals. But the technology has been too centered on what we're trying to do rather than the results. And where we start to see the opportunity for leaders as we look to the future is moving beyond just this concept of digital and really moving in to focusing on how we enable humans. And by humans, we talk about customers and we talk about employees. And we see that the leaders going into the future are going to be the ones that can deliver new experiences, not technology. They're going to deliver experiences for customers and employees that will take their business to greater places. Now, how are they going to do that? In some cases, it will be through technology, but the focus of the work will be the business delivering for those employees and those customers. And that human-centered transformation will be a differentiator for leaders in the marketplace. The second prediction that we have, a tech talent panic will create broad gaps until new sourcing models go mainstream. Tech has always been a bit of a challenge. We have higher attrition rates than most other industries. It takes longer to fill jobs. The other issue that we're starting to see is because technology moves so fast and we're changing the way that we do everything, it's hard to stay on top and it's hard to find those skills that you need. This is even exacerbated by the fact that a lot of people that have the right skills tend to want to do one of three things. One, big tech. Two, big consulting. Or three, startups. And so for the rest of us, we're wondering about how do we get that talent? How do we get the right skills? And so Forrester's looking at this future and recognizing that there are a lot of companies out there that if they have not thought through their own plans around how to identify talent, how to build and retain talent, and then how to compensate that talent, they're going to struggle. And so as you look to this future, how do you start to think about what you need to do versus what you need to leverage partners? And how do you bring all of that together in a way where you can provide the skills you need to drive the capabilities to create the right tech strategy? Now, we do see some new models that are going to come, but until that point, it's going to be difficult. And you're really going to have to look for different ways of how you deliver skills and capabilities so that your company can serve the humans that we talked about in the first prediction. Now, the third prediction. I talked about the pandemic a little bit. I don't want to focus too much on it. I think we've all focused too much on it. Let's really think to the future here. But one of the challenges is we want to get to that future, that human-centered future. And as we work with, this tech talent panic that we're talking about, the fact of the matter is we made a lot of great decisions over the pandemic to keep business moving. But those great decisions weren't always made with the longer term in mind. And this leads to technical debt. And this technical debt came at a time where we really didn't have options. But now, as we start to wind out, hopefully, out of the pandemic, we find that we now are stuck with some of these decisions that we made. And so what will we do with this technology debt? It's a critical issue. We think it's going to worsen for up to 60% of firms. That's a lot of different companies, a lot of people that are going to have to work this through. And if you really want to make this shift from short-termism to long-termism, you're going to have to figure out how to handle that debt. The fourth and last prediction that I'm going to talk to is the idea of anywhere work. This is something Forrester spent a lot of time analyzing, and we think it is a key trend for companies moving forward, not only for the experience for their employees, but also for creating employees that can then be obsessed about delivering for customers. The challenge that we see is that we believe that 1/3 of companies are going to fail at anywhere work. And we don't think it's maybe due to the pandemic and due to the virus. And the reason for that is we just find that too many people are going to apply the same models that they're doing when they were in the office, and they're going to apply it to anywhere work. And the fact of the matter is, as we get into anywhere work, the way that we engage with our clients and with our fellow employees will change. Right now, we're all on screens. 2 years ago, for the most part, we were all in offices. Now that dynamic will change daily. And as you start to look at how that's going to change daily, you're going to have to start to think about, what kind of experience do I get? And the worry here is if you just try to take what you're doing today and you don't think about the future, you're going to struggle. So with that in mind, with those four predictions, people look and say, okay, well, what do I do about it? And we just believe the old approaches don't work. And we think it's time for a new model. So in light of everything that I've talked about, we've also identified some trends going on. One is we find our research that tech investment productivity is falling. So all of these investments that we make actually are being made with fewer and fewer returns. The second thing that we find is as we make these investments, we're seeing something we call digital sameness. Digital sameness is going out and investing in digital solutions and getting the same result. Go look at apps in similar industries, airline industry, retail industry. Companies make significant investments, yet what they do greatly resembles what their competitors do. And so this is where our premise around focusing on the humans and moving beyond just digital, but how do you get out of that mold, out of digital sameness, and create something that will drive good CX? I talked about technical debt a little bit. The other piece is around business uncertainty. We have more uncertainty than ever before. Pre-pandemic, we had a lot. Pandemic has added a lot more because we're working with customers different. We're working with employees different. There are more technologies than ever before. There is capital anywhere you want to get it. And so that ability to think about how competition will come in, how that changes, and how you need to react is critical. The other thing that I would posit is that the future is less knowable. And technology is doing a big piece here. if you want to succeed, you need to become a master of uncertainty. Because what has been happening over the last 20 to 30 years is you go out there and humans want to get technology. They're provided with technology. They learn how to use that technology and they want more. So the vendors then create new solutions. And so you get this double helix approach, and the amplitude of the double helix is accelerating all the time. So the humans create that demand, the demand is filled, they create more demand. And so now we're starting to see new technologies come in, everything to keep things moving faster. But what that does is it creates more uncertainty. So as we look at this, Forrester sat down and said, we've got a lot of things that are changing, and we have a lot of uncertainty, and we've got a lot of limitations with the way that we do tech today. So we looked at it and we did some research on individuals to see what individuals are most successful with technology. And we found there were the three things that the individuals do. First, they're very agile in the way they use technology. Second, they're very curious in the way they test the technology. And third, they have a big appetite for risk in terms of how they use the technology. And if it doesn't work, they go and find a new way around it. Now, we took that and we said, how do we apply that to the enterprise? And when we applied that to the enterprise, we found some very interesting things. And this is what led to us building something that we call future fit technology strategy. I'm going to walk you through the definition that you see here. And then from there, I'm then going to talk through its component pieces. So the first thing is future fit is a customer obsessed approach to technology. Forrester data shows that customer obsessed companies do four things better than everybody else: better revenues, growth, better profitability, better client engagement, better employee engagement. Those are four great attributes that everybody wants in their firms. And so this is a customer-obsessed approach to technology, puts the customer at the fore. Next, it enables a company to rapidly reconfigure business structures and capabilities. This is that uncertainty piece that I was talking about, that ability to quickly change the way that we work, to seize new opportunity or respond to threat. Absolutely critical. Now, it meets future customer employee needs. This goes into some of that human center that I'm talking about. It's that ability to really be able to help drive better experiences to the customers, to the employees. And the way you do it is with adaptivity, creativity, and resilience. Those are the three core pieces here. So future fit tech strategy for companies that can do it, that can do adaptivity, creativity, resilience, they outperform. And I'll come to the data in a bit. But first, what I want to do is I want to walk you through each of these dimensions to help you understand what we do and what we see. So the first dimension that I typically go to is that of resilience. And resilience, when you look at it, it's really where a lot of tech shops start. And it's unfortunately where many of them spend a little too much time. It's absolutely critical to be able to deliver your brand promise regardless of the situation. This was the pandemic to a T. People were able to get out there and still serve customers. People were still able to get their employees to work from home. But there were differences between how people were able to do that. We know of companies that had to move physical assets to people's houses to maintain workflow, file cabinets, PCs. They had to refactor applications. We know people on the other end of the spectrum, people were just able to work from home. And the difference between those two firms, the one was really, it was a risk mitigation. You know, how do we get up and running as quickly as possible and protect as much of our business as we could? Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, those companies were looking around and saying, hey, there are fundamental changes to the way our customers are going to engage and how we are going to work with our employees. How can we turn our resilience into competitive advantage? So Forrester's really tried to work and help people understand the importance of that. And you see that every day if you ever watch commercials and you see all these different companies in the financial and the insurance space. They all talk about how they've been around for so long and they talk about that resilience. They want you to know that they'll be there when things go bad. And so for technology, the ability to be able to be resilient is absolutely critical. But it's just the start of what you need to do around future fit. Now, the second dimension that we talk about is adaptability, adaptiveness. Adaptiveness is a term that comes from nature, and we picked that term for a reason. Adaptive organisms are the ones that not only survive, but they're the ones that thrive. They react to external stimuli and they're quickly able to change what they do to be able to meet threats or to be able to seize opportunities. Adaptive companies do the same thing. They can rapidly move capital, people, they can move technology to seize opportunity. But what they can do is not only move that, but they know when to move it. And what's key there is that they get great predictive insights. And those predictive insights enable them to know where market opportunity is so they can then move that capital, those people, that technology to seize that opportunity. During the pandemic, again, a great example of adaptiveness is a company in the digital printing space. They identified the opportunity to do masks, not in their core business. They stood it up in 2 weeks. Within 4 weeks, they were doing monogrammed masks. They were able to move people, technology, capital, all because they had great insights that showed them there was an opportunity. So this is where you want to be adaptive. The last piece of the model is around creativity. And I talk to tech leaders every week. And when we talk about creativity, there's always a little bit of that's not what we do. But the fact of the matter is, there's two ways to think about creativity from a tech side of things. The first one is the tech that we deploy gives our company and our customers more time, more knowledge. With that expansion of time and knowledge, the question is, what are we going to do with it? Some companies will take that increase in time and knowledge and they'll shrink the balloon and they'll right size the organization. Our data say that those companies aren't the leaders. What our data show us is that the leaders are the ones that take that increase in knowledge and time, and they use that to enable people to create. We went and we did some work taking a look at the B2B sales space. And when we did it about 5 years ago, we thought with all of the automation and new solutions in B2B e-commerce, we thought that the number of B2B reps would fall. What we found 5 years on is that actually increased. And when we looked at what leaders were doing, they were taking their salespeople and they were complementing them with better data, better insights, better capability. And then the salespeople used that to come up with new approaches to clients, to come up with new clients to call on, to come up with new services and products to take to those clients. They created. The other element of creativity is, how do we think about solving problems? And this is the use of the imagination. You are seeing that people are changing the way that we solve problems all the time. And it does not have to be limited to one part of your organization. Yeah, we have some people that we'll call creative. We have some people sometimes that are that creative genius. But creativity is something that doesn't cost money, but it's something that can return huge amounts of value. And so creativity is that third element. Now, one quick aside here. We talked about resilient, we talked about adaptive, we talked about creative. When you look at those three, the adaptive muscle is really the one where I try to get people to focus. And the reason for that focus is that the more adaptive you get, the more you have that great insights and the quicker you can move people, time, money to seize opportunity, the better you will do. But that will also enable you to better move into that resilience camp when you need to make sure that you have what you need. It'll also enable you to flick the switch and move into the creative side. And so the three of them become very synergistic in the approach of what you're going to try and do. Now, I've talked a couple times about and have used the phrase customer obsession. I've talked about highest revenues, highest profitability, best customer satisfaction, best employee engagement. Customer obsession is a real value. And the people that push for it and plan for it are the ones that outperform. Now, the challenge is that there aren't a lot of companies on the obsessed side of things. Companies are still trying to work through the spectrum of different levels of customer obsession. And so from a Forrester perspective, as we think about that, you see it up here at the top, when we look at where business maturity, we find that about 59% of companies are either customer naive, aware, and that's about it. And so then you get to that higher level of customer committed, about 1 in 3, and obsessed, it's only 8%. Now, when we start to look at the IT maturity, we find that IT maturity typically transform at the base of the business maturity and the business transformation. So when we're talking about where companies are still not very along in their customer obsession transformation, we find that IT maturity typically is at that same pace, and they're what we call traditional. Now, some companies are making the shift into modern, and very few are making that shift into future fit. So it's not just where I talk about all those great things of future fit, you can't just flip the switch. It has to come hand in hand with a new approach to the customer. But if you can get that right, you're going to see the shifts that you see in the middle of the page here, where you're going to go from that traditional IT where, it's an order taker, right? You're driven by cost. You're focused on modernization. Then you all of a sudden get the modern. Now you're a partner or a player. You're cloud first, right? Maybe not cloud native, but you're cloud first. You're thinking about continuous delivery. But ultimately, you want to get to future fit. And this is what builds on that modern IT, but it's where we now start to have great connections to the business, shared accountabilities for outcomes. We're adaptive, we're creative, we're resilient. The other thing that we've done, we've made this shift that you see at the bottom from efficiency into effectiveness. And that's a massive shift that we are really working with a lot of different companies right now. The idea of efficiency is something that we've always done in tech. And efficiency delivers value, it does, but that value is harder and harder to capture and hold on to. And so what we're starting to see the real leaders is making that shift from efficiency to effectiveness. And where that drives real value is businesses tend to recognize effectiveness better, that ability to drive revenue growth, new customer growth. So as we start to look about thinking about how do we get more customer obsessed, how do we get more future fit, we want to drive more of that effectiveness. And this is where that transformation becomes key. Now, I won't go deep into this, but this is complementary to the previous page that you saw. And this is how you'll start to see some of the differences between what we look at as traditional versus modern versus future fit. Really what you see, though, is major change in the way of the role of IT. You see a change in focus. You see the change in the way that we deliver value. And if you just focus on future fit, these are the aspirations that we want in tech. The closer we are to the business, the closer we are to the customer, the more that we're delivering outcomes. These are the things that our employees want and crave. And as leaders, these are the results that we want to deliver. And so that ability to think about how you move your team from traditional into modern and on to future fit is a key element of your strategy, and one that's important for you to think about how to do. So as I come to a close, I want to just introduce the full model. And so this is how Forrester thinks about future fit. I primarily focused on the triangle, the three capabilities of adaptive, creative, and resilient. Complementing those are the core drivers of platforms, practices, and partners. Now, the three Ps are a play on what we usually talk about in technology, where we talk about people, we talk about process, we talk about technology. But instead of just staying at that esoteric level, we really wanted to drive to a higher level of insight. And so when we talk about technology, we suggest you really make sure you have the right platform strategy. And how do you think about these platforms as areas where you create value, where you build single versions of the customer, single versions of the truth, and you use these platforms to innovate and build solutions on top. Instead of process, we think you need to focus on practices. We've been trying to redesign processes for years, and we've had varying levels of success, but honestly, not enough success. And so as we look at practices, the whole idea there is how do we start to build cross-functional teams with shared outcomes, what we talked about earlier, that enable us to move quicker with more trust, more transparency, and enable us to get work done. And then the last piece, people are always critical, but the idea of how you're going to work with partners becomes so important to what we do in the future. It's going to be deeper relationships than we've ever seen before. And some of that goes to some of those trends we talked about. And this is where I'd like to now take this model and apply it to what we talked about with some of those predictions. Now, the whole idea of human-centered transformation is with this focus on employees and customers. This is what Future Fit is set out to do. It puts the customer and the employee at the center of everything you do. It's that customer-obsessed approach. The second thing I talked about is a tech talent panic. Future fit firms are looking ahead and they're thinking about skills and they're understanding what they need, and they build that adaptive muscle, and that adaptive muscle enables them to move the right people to the right opportunity quickly to be able to stay ahead of those challenges. I also talked about the anywhere work side of things, right? On the anywhere work, again, future fit firms have the right architecture, they have the right tech stack, the platforms, the practices, the partners, all of that comes together so that people get great experiences, whether they're in an office, whether they're at home. And so Future Fit enables that. And then around tech debt, again, that ability to be resilient and have the right level of support for the organization, but then to think about how do I put the right architecture, the right technologies on top of that to be adaptive and then even creative. This is what you need to be able to respond to that business uncertainty. Now, it's a great theory, but we've assessed it in practice. And you've seen the number here on the left-hand side as I've been speaking. The fact is that when we looked at 530 decision makers, senior decision makers, we found that the companies that are future fit outperform their peers by 2.8 times. That's compelling. And if you can get that 2.8 times faster growth, that's going to make your company a leader. And so we firmly believe that future fit is the future. We think that companies that are future fit are going to be the ones that seize opportunity, respond quicker to challenge. We think they won't fear the uncertainty that's in the marketplace. We think they're going to be the ones that set the agenda. They're going to be the ones that drive human-centered transformation. They're going to be the ones that are making great decisions for their technology and for their people. And so I'll leave you with this thought. And the idea behind Future Fit is that things are moving fast. Life moves fast. And your ability to be able to respond to that is critical. And so having the right framework and the right strategy is key. And so I thank you for your time today, and I hope you have a great rest of the event. Thank you very much.
Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the headlines. First up on DevOps.com is a delicious article on what donuts tell us about DevOps and delivery risk. Today, most DevOps teams don't think too much about their approach to risk. Usually, the typical attitude focuses on what to add to reduce risk further. More tests, more processes, and less risk are all obviously good things. Or are they? Maybe, maybe not. There is such a thing as too many tests and too many processes, which becomes counterproductive. But not enough tests or processes also can be a bad thing. The ideal balance lies in not avoiding risk entirely or ignoring the reality of risk. Instead, a sensible middle ground can be found in taming risk. This article describes where this middle ground lies and how automation can help, and uses the Krispy Kreme donut chain and its world-famous assembly line as an example of acceptable risk. Trigger alert, this article may send you down to the donut shop for a tasty treat. And we look at how a new IT model can help organizations tackle the complexities of a multi-cloud environment. The pandemic put incredible pressure on organizations to modernize and accelerate digital transformation efforts, with many businesses rushing to embrace cloud strategies in response. Currently, multi-cloud is the most commonly deployed IT environment, and about 2/3 of organizations plan to operate a multi-cloud environment within 3 years. But there are complexities and challenges of managing across cloud borders that organizations are still grappling with, and concerns on security, data integration, and cost remain. Enterprises will need to find ways to leverage existing cloud investments and redefine best practices and what it means to have agility and resilience in IT. This article outlines some of the challenges with multi-cloud and offers up a cloud-smart approach to IT, in which organizations move away from the blanket cloud-first approaches to IT and instead be more thoughtful about which workloads run where. A cloud-smart approach can deliver on the flexibility and agility that most organizations seek to compete in today's digital world, while enabling enterprises to significantly simplify operations. All right, over on Container Journal is an article that describes the steps organizations must take to prepare for the removal of the Docker shim component from Kubernetes. The April 19th release of Kubernetes version 1.24 will remove the Docker shim component. Organizations that haven't already should communicate with their dev teams and map out a plan. If the deprecation impacts your organization, it's nothing to panic over. There are 3 things you can do to identify any impacts and stop the deprecation from breaking your clusters. This article details what the removal of Docker shim means, its potential impact, and what organizations can do to be ready. And we look at a survey by Styra that suggests the number of cloud-native applications deployed over the next 12 months will increase significantly. 97% of IT decision makers and 96% of developers say their organizations plan to expand use of these applications. The same number of each also rated their abilities to manage cloud-native application security as being strong. However, there is some disagreement over who is actually responsible for securing these applications. Close to half of IT leaders said the IT infrastructure and operations team should define the policies that control how cloud applications are secured and managed. That's compared to 21% of developers that agreed with that statement. 41% of IT decision makers also believe that IT infrastructure and ops teams are responsible for proving that applications are compliant internally. And that's compared to 22% of developers who agreed. Who should be responsible then for meeting and proving compliance to external auditors? That is a subject of debate, with 42% of developers and only 25% of IT decision makers saying it is the security team's job. This article looks at these and other survey results, which overall show that as the rate at which cloud-native applications are being built accelerates, the biggest issue that IT teams may soon face is simply deploying and maintaining them. All right, over on Security Boulevard, we have the results of Thales' 2022 Global Data Threat Report, which shows that malware, ransomware, and phishing continue to plague global organizations. 1 in 5 organizations have experienced a ransomware attack in the last year, according to the survey, and 1/3 have experienced a data breach. But while most remain concerned about the security risks of an increasingly remote workforce, less than half of businesses have a formal ransomware plan in place. Nearly 1/4 of enterprises surveyed said hard financial losses from penalties, fines, and legal expenses have been or would be the greatest impact from ransomware. Lost productivity, recovery costs, and breach notification lagged behind, while softer long-term costs such as brand reputation and customer loss were even less of a concern. All right, finally, we take a look at the recent data leak of Nestle's customers by the hacker group Anonymous, who warned that other companies that continued doing business in Russia, that they would be next. Multinational companies around the world voluntarily pulled their business out of Russia after President Vladimir Putin launched an unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. But Anonymous is giving any stragglers a nudge. Nestle had become its first target, noting on Twitter, the Anonymous Collective has leaked the database of the largest food company in the world, Nestle, leaked 10 gigabytes data of emails, passwords, Nestle business customers, etc. Nestle took issue with Anonymous' claims, arguing that the leak was the result of its own actions and that the data already had been published accidentally. In an article in Fortune, Nestle said it related to a case from February this year when some randomized and predominantly publicly available test data was made accessible unintentionally online for a short period of time. The company further said it investigated and no further action was deemed necessary. Regardless, the hacktivist group's claim is a cautionary tale that other organizations should take heed. All right, that's it for the headlines. I'll be back on Monday with a brand new batch for you. Until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechstrongTV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Mackenzie Jackson, who is a developer advocate over at GitGuardian. Mackenzie, thank you so much for taking a few minutes and joining me today. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on TechstrongTV.
Great. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a new report that you guys first you came out with. But first, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about GitGuardian.
Yeah, sure. So GitGuardian, we are a French cybersecurity company. We've actually just in the process of opening up an office in Austin, in Texas, as well.
You and everybody else, right?
Yeah, exactly. The place to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
But GitGuardian, we specialize in detecting secrets in inside source code. And when I'm talking about secrets, I'm talking about digital authentication credentials, so API keys, credential pairs, username, password, security certificates. So anything that's kind of made to be used programmatically, that's what we specialize in detecting. And so we actually scan every single public commit that's made to GitHub. So every time you push code into github.com, if it's public, GitGuardian actually scans that. We scanned it all last year, and we alert anyone that may have leaked some secrets. And while we also monitor the private code repositories of companies to make sure that the secrets, which are the crown jewels of any organization, they grant access into all the inner working systems, to make sure that these don't, what we call sprawl, you don't lose track of them, and making sure that they don't especially get into the wrong hands of adversaries.
So important these days, especially with we keep hearing a lot about secrets and secret sprawl and the vulnerabilities that have been found in the Git repositories. But I want to talk to you about the State of Secrets sprawl report that your company just came out with. It's the 2022 edition. So is this the first year that you guys have done this, or have you done this in years past?
So this is the second time we've released this sprawl. So last year we released it as well. And we, as I said, because we scan, all of GitHub.com's public commits, we released last year basically what we found from doing that. And this year we've actually expanded the report. We've expanded our analysis to also look into Docker images that are public, and also into private repositories as well. So not the first year, but some new information.
All right. So let's kind of dive into some of the more important findings, or the more salient findings, I should say. What were some of the kind of the highlights of the report that you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, the big number that is kind of that everyone is curious about is, what is the total number of secrets that we found exposed publicly throughout the year? So last year, so when we monitored the entire year of 2020, we actually found 2 million secrets that were leaked into public GitHub. And this year, that number increased to 6 million.
Oh my gosh.
So a huge increase there. So we're saying that this is actually a kind of a 2x increase in secrets. The reason why, if you're wondering why 2 plus 2 suddenly equals 6, you haven't been doing maths wrong, but because we've improved our detection engine, we detect over 350 types of secrets, whereas last year we only detected 250, and also the amount of code that is being pushed to GitHub.com has increased. So when you compare apples to apples, it's about a 2x increase, even though we've had a 3x jump in the amount of secrets that were actually uncovered.
Got it.
So
I'm going to leave that up to the experts as far as the math is concerned. I'm just going to take your word for it. Well, I hesitate to ask you because right now it doesn't sound like the news is all that good. But what else did you guys find in the report that kind of made you maybe, I don't know, think twice or hesitate about the secret sprawl and what you guys are seeing out there?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot in there. How about I share? There's one glimmer of hope that we see in the report. So maybe we start with that.
Okay.
And it's actually, for the first time ever, we saw actually a decrease in Amazon AWS keys. This is one of the predominant keys that is listed, and it presents a significant risk to organizations. And so why we believe this has happened is that there has been a huge increase in awareness about this particular type of key campaigns from Amazon themselves as well. So this has kind of created, that phenomenon that we can see that education is starting to filter through. Unfortunately, as we've seen that, we've also seen lots of increases in other types of keys. And, we're seeing new competitors to Amazon, like PlanetScale, Superbase. We saw huge increases in the amount of keys that we found for those. So, there is the good part that we can focus on is we have seen some improvement in areas where investment has been made, which means that, there is a way to kind of get on top of that. But unfortunately, we have a long way to go.
Yeah, it sounds like that was good news tempered by some more bad news. So Mackenzie, you're kind of killing me here. No, then with that in mind, then do you think we're going to continue to see secret sprawl occur, especially with these as we see these kind of alternative cloud providers kind of come more into a play within organizations that are maybe looking to go cloud first or at least adopt a hybrid cloud environment?
So I think that we have a long way to go before we start combating this. And, I think what's important is we need to make sure that, detection is available and is ahead of the curve. So one of the things that GitGuardian did this year was implement generic secrets detectors so we can capture, the keys that might not be so popular yet. I think that we will see an improvement in areas of, leaking secrets in Git. Well, at least this is my optimistic side. But then, this is a habit of mine to kind of balance out good news with bad news. We're seeing, we started examining other technologies. So Docker images, and we found that about, nearly 5%, about 4.6% of Docker images contained at least one secret that were on dockerhub.com. So whilst we might be, although we're not winning the war, in Git, but, we have to also factor in that we have all these other technologies that we have to be aware of too. So, I don't like to always be doom and gloom. I do like to try and focus on the positives, and the positives are that we have tools available to start to try and combat this. We're seeing awareness around it. We're seeing some pockets of improvement. And I think if we continue to push in this area, then we'll be able to get it down. But this year certainly didn't show that trend, but we're still in the battle.
Well, do you think that some of these numbers may also reflect the fact that we've got a completely different kind of workforce these days? People are working from home. They're not going back to the office for the most part. They're working in brand new environments, maybe to them, where they, maybe weren't used to working from home, and they're kind of getting into the groove now. But do you think that, because of the way that there was this monumental shift in the way organizations work now, that may have contributed to the problem, and now we're kind of we're having to go back and kind of clean up the messes, if you will?
I definitely can see that has had an impact, and I think we can see that in the data. Mm-hmm. And I think moving away from those secure networks, going into more cloud environments, it has that impact that now we have to handle, additional secrets to be able to interact with these. So there's certainly a lot more secrets that we have to handle. That is definitely a consideration. Mm-hmm. And with certainly, I think we can all agree that the remote work, we're getting into the groove of it. So hopefully we will start to see some improvements on those areas as well. But it is one of those things where I don't think that created the problem, but it certainly didn't help us solve it.
All of a sudden, I've got a Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," going through my mind. Oh, anyway. Well, so were there other findings in the report that kind of made you guys, actually maybe just didn't change too much from the last year, that, either for better or for worse?
Yeah, well, I mean, we did see kind of similarities in kind of where the leaks were coming from. Mm-hmm. There were some countries that made improvements. So Brazil was one of the countries that leaked a lot of secrets last year that actually moved down today. But this data also reflects the number of developers in these countries as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there's significant improvement or that particular countries are bad. But one of the areas that we really focused on for this year is looking at internal repositories, those private repositories, because GitGuardian, scans a lot of organizations' code for secrets, and we're able to gather that information. And this information we didn't have last year, and I guess that we were probably most shocked at kind of the occurrences of secrets that we found in repositories. And then we combine that with the amount of AppSec engineers that are out there, and you realize that this is just a monumental task. A typical organization of 400 developers may have 4 AppSec engineers. And within a year, they will be finding over 1,000 secrets based on our analysis. That's a lot of secrets that 4 people have to review, communicate with the leakers, discover what it is, revoke it, create new keys, insert it. They're having to do this multiple times a day on top of all the other vulnerabilities they need to deal with. So, we didn't have this information last year. And I think this was kind of one of the ones that really made us stop and go, wow, no wonder the problem is bad, because, we don't have the security teams in place. They don't have the bandwidth to be able to kind of deal with this correctly. So we have to start thinking about a shift in how we build software and how we work to be able to actually start coming up with some solutions for this.
Yeah, you actually bring up a really good point, and I think it speaks a lot to the larger issue that a lot of organizations facing, and that's quite literally just a lack of talent. They can't find the right people to fill these positions, and through whatever reasons, it seems like we're always going to be kind of one step behind when it comes to having enough people to fill the spots and to do the work that is necessary to make sure that the code is scrubbed and it's clean and it's secure, and that once we get that, then everything else after that obviously will be a lot easier, if you will, for security, because the farther left you shift, the easier that it becomes to secure the application. So it's really fascinating to hear all these different results that you guys have found in this year's survey. And before we close it out, because we are running out of time, is there like one finding that you really kind of glommed onto as soon as you found it? You're like, oh yes, this makes so much sense, or maybe not.
Well, I think it is that correlation that we just discussed about the amount of secrets and AppSec engineers. And I think that, if we can do a takeaway of, how to solve this, we talked about, you just mentioned it, shifting left. Mm-hmm. And I think it's about, we need to empower developers early on in the process to be able to kind of help them solve this problem, so it doesn't even reach down the line at the AppSec engineers. So I think we need to really kind of focus on that education part, tools like being able to scan for secrets in your using Git hooks before they enter repositories. Mm-hmm. And having that whole process shift left. And I think this is the number one thing that we all kind of realized in this report is that it's absolutely fundamentally important that everyone in the software supply chain, from the developers all the way down to the deployment teams, is on board with security and plays their part, even if it's just implementing the correct solutions for them.
Yeah. So if folks are interested in taking a look at the survey themselves, is it readily available on the GitGuardian website?
It's readily available on the GitGuardian website, also on our blog there. So definitely, we're advertising it everywhere. So I'm sure you won't be able to miss it if you go to our website. Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Well, Mackenzie, thank you very much for walking me through some of the findings of the survey, both fascinating and slightly terrifying. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. It's been great.
You bet. All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by TechStrong Live and powered by TechStrong Group.
Hey everybody, happy Thursday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the webinars preview. I always tell you, we have so many great webinars coming up on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. I have got 3 here that are coming up in the next week or so. Hopefully you can mark your calendar and join us, because these are some really great webinars. The first one is called Zero Trust Architecture for Cloud Native Apps on Hybrid Infrastructure. This one is happening Tuesday, April 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. This is sponsored by AWS with Tetrate. Zero Trust Architecture is now a requirement across the U.S. government, and its appeal to organizations of all types is growing. What does this mean for application development and delivery? Service Mesh is the federally recommended reference architecture for Zero Trust. It also is a leading solution for applications running on hybrid architecture. So in this webinar, AWS and Tetrate will show how to use Service Mesh with new and existing applications, moving applications to a Zero Trust architecture and enabling them to leverage hybrid infrastructure effectively. Such a great topic there. All right, the second one is called Implementing Kubernetes Chargeback on AWS. This one is happening Wednesday, April 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. This one is sponsored by AWS, partnered with KubeCost. Implementing Kubernetes cost allocation is particularly challenging compared to other types of IT infrastructure. KubeCost offers a way for organizations to do this with a free and open source tool designed to help you monitor and reduce Kubernetes spend. Now, this webinar will explore how teams can leverage KubeCost to gain cost visibility and introduce some best practices for implementing chargebacks in your own AWS environment. Another good one. All right, the final webinar I want to let you know about today is called How to Optimize Kubernetes for Security, Cost, Reliability, and Scale. This one is happening Thursday, April 7th. This one is at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. It is sponsored by Fairwinds. As Kubernetes matures and adoption increases, one question keeps coming up. Am I doing it right? In organizations with hundreds or even thousands of clusters at work, finding ways to boost the efficiency and the productivity of these important areas is so very critical. This webinar will take a look at the ways you can optimize Kubernetes to ensure you are achieving key business goals around security, compliance, reliability, and scale. All right, that's it for the webinar's preview. I'll have a new batch on Monday, so please do join me then. Until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All right, we are back. We've got the View with Vizard coming up now. And this one, Mike Vizard is talking with Jeffrey Engel, who is the president and chairman of Conquest Cyber. And they discuss what organizations need to do to defend themselves against attacks from nation states in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine. We all know these cyber attacks are coming, but we don't know who's going to be impacted and how they're going to be impacted. So it's critical that every organization stay vigilant and diligent in their cybersecurity efforts. And Jeffrey and Mike have a very, very relevant discussion about that. So let's go ahead and roll. It's a great one.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Jeff Engel, who is president and chairman of Conquest Cyber. They are a provider of a cybersecurity as a service platform, and we'll get into what that means and all the details thereof. But Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We hear a lot about the Ukraine these days, and so my first question to you is, what should companies really be thinking about here when it comes to cybersecurity these days? Because we're all anticipating some major attacks. They have not, at least as far as we know, happened yet, but maybe they will. So what's going on?
So we're definitely seeing an uptick in activity across all of the critical infrastructure sectors that the Department of Homeland Security has identified. Organizations should be thinking that they are either likely already being targeted, may already have been breached and just not be aware of it, or that they're on someone's lists overseas or even in the United States that to be exploited eventually. So they should be thinking about the fact that they're a part of this conflict, whether they're fully aware of it or not, and they need to start prioritizing what their most important assets are so they can properly protect those.
Do you think that there are areas that people are just not paying attention to or have not? I mean, we've been dealing with cybersecurity issues forever and a day. And every time there's an incident, we always say, this is the wake up call. And then a lot of people just roll over and go back to sleep anyway. So my question to you is, what makes this scenario any different than previous scenarios?
Well, this is the real normalization of cyber as a domain of warfare. So I think that's the critical element of this that there needs to be broad recognition of. But there is a really significant risk of the 400,000 plus organizations within the US taking this, going as a wake-up call to start doing something. But as soon as this conflict ends, going back to business as usual. And there are a number of areas that are just not getting the attention that they need. Really, the connection between risk and operations, the appropriate patching of critical assets, the planning and practicing for response and recovery. None of those areas are really given the level of business attention that it's needed in order to build resiliency against scenarios like this in the future. And it really has made the organizations and the critical infrastructure sectors that are non-governmentally controlled the soft underbelly that's now becoming part of the geopolitical conflicts. The example here is with Colonial Pipeline. That was essentially a shot across the bow that if you were to engage, in more active kinetic activity in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, you would likely see greater and more significant attacks against oil and gas infrastructure in the U.S. by the more robust capability that the Russian government and their proxies bring to bear. So we are part of this conflict, whether you're a commercial services provider around oil and gas, healthcare, financial services, a state and local government entity, or operating at the federal level. And we're really all in this together, and any weak link in that ecosystem could be the reason that an exploitation occurs that fundamentally changes the way of life for everyday Americans.
A lot of folks I talk to don't believe that they have the capability to defend themselves against a nation state or their proxy. The assumption is that those guys have skills that are beyond the capabilities of the average organization, who is maybe able to defend itself against, your average script kiddie or some fraud kind of mechanism, but that this is just too big a challenge. Is that a real assessment, or is there things that can be done at this level?
Well, I think there's a number of fallacious arguments associated with that statement. One, I think on the backside of it, the script kiddies, what we just saw with the Lapsus group and the activities they did, those are literally the definition of script kiddies. And they were able to take down, and breach Okta, NVIDIA, and a number of other significant, organizations that are dumping, tens of millions of dollars, if not more, into their cybersecurity program, and probably have a more robust cyber posture than most government entities. So when you look at that, I think the dividing line between the capacity of a script kiddie and a nation state has really started to blur. At the same time, organizations can definitively defend themselves against kind of the spray type of attack. So when you're one of 400,000, critical infrastructure sector organizations, you just have to be a little bit harder to gain access to in order for them to say, I'm going to move past you, unless you're intentionally being targeted by that nation state. In those cases where you're intentionally being targeted by the nation state, it probably has something to do with your organizational activity or your profile. And that's where you definitively have to make greater investments in building a stronger cyber posture. But if a 17-year-old in London or in Oxford can break into the most sophisticated cybersecurity companies and governments, then we would think that our security programs would have a heightened ability to defend against the equivalents on the other side of the chessboard.
Do you think a lot of the damage that might be inflicted is more of a collateral nature? Because some of these attacks get launched at one entity and then they wind up just spreading out because they don't really have that much control over where the malware winds up at the end of the day. And the next thing you know, you could be halfway around the world and have nothing to do with this conflict and suddenly be hit by something.
I think there's definitely a possibility of that. And I think there's also, there are capabilities that are being tested and developed in this cyber conflict that'll ultimately get repurposed for use outside of it. So I think the attack surface has fundamentally changed over the past decade from both a defender and an attacker standpoint. And I think we've seen an acceleration in that based off of how this conflict has evolved, both with the nation state cyber activity against critical infrastructure leading up to it, and then the counterattacks, as well as the use of proxies across the board. Many of the tools that are being developed, that are being actively used, being tested, and the techniques that are being proven out, really, we need to do a deep and constant forensic analysis on how those are playing out and use that to build into our cyber defenses. Because to your point, where it starts, may be very targeted, and where it ends up, really is based on the connectivity of the internet that goes everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the average organization has the ability to defend itself? Or a lot of times I've talked to folks in the past and they're kind of like, well, cybersecurity is too important to give it to somebody else to manage. And yet they don't have the resources internally to do it themselves. So are we reaching some sort of inflection point where security really needs to be consumed as a service because I just can't fight the fight anymore?
Yeah, I think there's a critical element of collective defense that has to be broadly understood. If you're monitoring your network, then you only know when you got specifically attacked. When you're working with a trusted partner ecosystem, then you're going to have visibility into when any of those organizations might have been attacked. And then you could take the collective resources of that centralized hub and apply the defenses across the entire ecosystem. So that's one aspect of it. I think that if you have trusted partners, then they can add value to you. At the same time, no organization is actually doing their cybersecurity internally. They can believe they have their own 24/7 security operations center. They can deploy all of the tools themselves, but ultimately there are access points into those technologies, into their supply chain that enable access from outside that they just can't monitor. So supply chain and third party and service provider and subsidiary risk, and those organizations and technologies as access points into the environment are going to exist regardless of whether or not you feel like as a CISO that you've got centralized control over your security program. And if you take that route, you're always going to have an issue with visibility into what is coming, even through the best, purchase of the best threat intelligence feeds. There's nothing like being able to see an attack on one point of an ecosystem, being able to respond to that attack, and then apply the protective measures across that entire ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the playing field is going to get leveler in the future? Because, and I'm asking the question because we hear a lot about AI and we hear a lot about automation, and maybe that will be our salvation going forward, or is this just going to be an arms race forever and a day?
I think it's going to be an arms race forever and a day. I mean, as we developed, a capacity, during World War II for mass destruction, our counterparts then developed that capacity, and we ended up back in a stalemate. I think there's always going to be an effort to seek an advantage, which ultimately drives the establishment of some equilibrium in the system. So that's the incremental capacity advantage that an organization or a government or entity might enjoy is always going to be something that's fought for in a spy versus spy type of world that we live in cyberspace.
So what's your best advice to folks? What should they be thinking about today? What should they be driving for? I mean, because it can be daunting, and sometimes you just throw up your hands, and most business executives are like, well, it's dangerous crossing the street, so cybersecurity is just as dangerous, so it's a business risk, and we'll just assume that if we get hit, we'll hopefully have insurance.
Yeah. I think everyone needs to start shifting their mindset to resiliency. Yes, there is risk associated with being connected to the internet. There's also business advantage to it. The use of technology reduces the number of employees that you need. There's numerous advantages to accepting a level of cyber risk, but that doesn't negate the moral and fiduciary obligation, particularly in organizations that are across critical infrastructure, from preventing everything that's reasonably predicted within their business constraints and having mechanisms in place to be able to adapt to everything else. You would think if you build a building in South Florida and you don't have hurricane glass on that building, you're probably going to be held liable in the event that you have that type of damage, and you won't get insured, which is what we're seeing really within cyberspace now. If you don't have minimum controls in place, cyber insurers aren't willing to take the risk. So as we move forward, I think we're going to see more equivalency to building codes being established around cyber. And I think that's a healthy thing. It needs to be built into the calculus in business. You can't just do nothing. You can't transfer all of the risk because your business and your shareholders, all of those entities that supports, you have to at least do your due diligence and then take appropriate action. And that doesn't mean sticking your head in the sand or thinking if it's a nation state, we can't do anything. There is a lot that can be done to prevent scenarios from happening, be able to detect them early, and then being able to respond in a way that protects both your business and your shareholder value. And ultimately, if you need insurance, at that point, they're more likely to pay you if you've at least done your basic due diligence.
And as part of the resilience, it's all about the recovery process too, because I think you should expect to get hit at some level. It's going to happen. The question is how quickly can you respond, contain it, and then get the business back up to where it should be and hopefully minimize the disruption, right?
Absolutely. And, and recover. And this is not, to your point, cyber is not an IT issue anymore. It is just a part of business. You wouldn't expect a CEO to only look at his financials, once every year, in a board meeting where he didn't prepare and understand the in-depth nature of those, making sure that he's hitting targets. I think we're going to start to see more cyber risk and posture management and resiliency take an equivalent status to some of the financial aspects of business, because recovery isn't just activating your backups and cutting over. Recovery is across reputational, strategic, operational, financial, and external elements of business risk that ultimately, if done well, it can be a catalyst for growth. And if not, given the appropriate due diligence ahead of time, it will be the reason that businesses no longer exist.
All right, good. Hey, Jeff, thanks for being on the show and sharing your knowledge and insights.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, that wraps up another TechStrong TV broadcast for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Well, I'll be back on Monday with a brand new lineup of interviews and conversations on TechStrong TV. Before I do close things out, though, I want to remind you of so many different events that we have coming up. We've got some live in-person events. We've got some virtual events coming up. Too many to mention, but I did want to point out just a couple. We've got April 13th and 14th. We're going to be in D.C., folks. We have TechStrong Live events. On April 13th is the DevOps/Cloud Native Live, and April 14th is Cybersecurity Live. And these are one-day, half conference, half workshop style learning events. And do encourage you to check out the lineup of speakers and the agenda and register if you are in the DC area and you want to join us. We will have them, if you're not in the DC area, we will have them in other strategic locations around the country throughout the year. For the entire lineup, you can go to TechStrongEvents.com and check out all of the cities we're going to be in. You can also see the information on our Initech conferences, which are one-day, more general IT conferences that are located in strategic regional locations. So we are focusing right now on kind of the oil and gas area, but we are doing the Inotechs also in Washington, D.C. later this year. So that's going to be a new market for us for the Inotech events, but I do encourage you to check those out as well because they are great. We've got one in Houston, Dallas, Austin, Oklahoma City, and like I said, Washington, D.C. We've also got some virtual events coming down the road. We've got AppSecCon, which I believe is happening at the end of April or somewhere thereabouts. But all of the information, as I said, is available on TechStrongEvents.com. So please do check out the website. Please check out the different and varied shows that we have, we are producing throughout the year, the agenda, the lineup of speakers, and as I said before, register for the events themselves. I'll be at some of the events, so I hope to see you there. Until then, we'll see you on Monday on the next TechStrong TV broadcast. So until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend, and please, whatever you do, stay safe.